obviously, the first thing I want to be able to do is just thank the coaches that were here before. Obviously, we had a lot of great guys that did amazing job for us. Last year was a really special year, and a lot of these guys had been here for a handful of years. Some of them were just here for a short amount of time, but Raheem Morris, Eric Henderson, Jimmy Lake, Zach Robinson, KJ Black, Nick Jones, Jake Peets, and Jeremy Springer. Just very grateful for their contributions. I know we'll talk about some of those guys. But Raheem took most of those guys. And I think it's an awesome opportunity for those guys to be able to elevate their careers. He is so deserving of the job. And, you guys know he's one of my closest friends, but he's a great leader. I think it timed up perfectly for our last 3 years to be in sync. And what an amazing time. What an amazing amount of experiences that we had. And can't wait to watch him go shine. I know Zach and Jimmy will do an outstanding job as his coordinators. And then you look at, KJ and Nick Jones, they'll go and make big time contributions. Eric Henderson will just be down the street. And what an amazing job he's done with us, having a tremendous influence, creating basically his own culture within the defensive line room and the impact that he's had. But he's still going to be, close by. And, he's been on the road recruiting, doing his thing. So we'll miss him tremendously. And then Jeremy Springer, really happy for him and a job that's been earned. He'll do a great job being a great special teams coordinator for New England Patriots, and the same thing for Coach Peets as a pass game coordinator for Seattle. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Start with you, Kurt.
Hey, Sean, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
I know you really missed all of us, clearly. Can you tell us what the greatest challenge is with so much turnover? I know some of those spots are being filled within, but what is that challenge going into this season?
Well, I think every single year is a new year. And, the best part about what's for the most part been consistent here in our 7 years, Kirk, is that people are leaving for the right reasons. And I think that attracts quality coaches. And no different than every team is new. We've kind of gotten used to that with our coaching staff. What has been exciting is the people that we've onboarded and that are going to come in here are going to add something based on their experiences. But I think the consistent thing that we've looked for in coaches and people that we want to be able to bring into this building to help influence and affect positive change and be a part of helping people reach and realize their highest potential is, number one, high character people. We want good people. I think, adversity is inevitable, and the people that can handle that the right way will help you navigate that. And I think that was definitely on display and illustrated last year. And then people that have high capacity for the game, a bunch of different experiences, good communicators, good connectors, but the character and then the capacity for the game, and then ultimately being able to bring it together kind of like a team is what we're in the midst of. But man, I've had a lot of fun. I'm just so excited to attack 2024, and we'll have a lot of changes up here coming in the near future with new players and guys that we'll select in the draft. But it's an exciting time.
Just a quick combine question. You've always focused on character. You see these guys training to shave off fractions of a second in the 40 or whatever. When you go to the combine, what's the balance?
I won't be going to the combine.
You're not going to go?
No.
Okay, well then never
But go ahead. We'll watch it. It's all filmed. So go ahead. Ask your question.
What's the balance of milliseconds on the 40 versus the character issue versus, do you know 99% of what you're going to see anyway?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think the most important thing is what the tape looks like, and then what is the vetting and the human being. If there's anything that has consistently become clear when you reflect on the 7 years, and as Les and I and really our organization continue to identify the types of players that we want in our building, and really types of people in general, it's people that are tough. It's people that can not allow the outside circumstances to dictate their response, but there's a steadiness. There's a commitment to core values and principles. They love football. They want to keep the main thing. And then as it relates to just the evaluation, the tape is the best guide. I do think that those other things are good metrics, but we're asking guys to play football, not run track and field. And so it is something that's, a measurable, but it's not as important as some of the other things for us.
Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
Maria.
Hey, Sean. Welcome back.
Hey, Thank you.
You were probably never really gone, but
We've been busy, but it's been a good thing.
good. You interviewed obviously a lot of candidates for Raheem's position. What made you choose Chris to move him over, and why did you think he was the best fit?
Yeah, so I really think, there was a great opportunity when you look at it. I think we had, two tremendous in-house candidates when you look at Chris and Aubrey, both are who are going to be instrumental in leading our team moving forward, particularly on the defensive side. But, Chris has been here all 7 years. He's got a great capacity for the game, Maria. I think it's been helpful. He's coached on all three levels of the defense. He's coached the outside linebackers, the inside backers. He's worked with the safeties. He obviously comes from a pedigree. He's almost modest to a fault. But we've been close for a long time, but he's always been so steady. He's passionate about the game. He's got a great vision for what he wants to look like. He's got great organizational skills, great ability to be able to collaborate. I mentioned Aubrey, and Aubrey is one of the best leaders that we have. He's got a great charisma and a presence, and I'm really looking forward to both of those guys leading us, in addition to the remaining guys that we've added on the staff or the guys that will continue to be here. But, Chris did a great job. When we went through the interview process, it was tough. There was a lot of quality candidates, but I think just with his experience and his preparation and some of the different things that he's done to really just be where his feet are planted, but also prepare for when an opportunity arises, you're ready to attack it the right way. And I'm excited for him and have a tremendous amount of confidence in him.
It is interesting that he's been there for the whole 7 years. Why do you think he's such a good fit with you?
Well, I think there's a lot of similarities. We both come from a football family. We're both passionate about that. And really we've been close ever since we played football together at Miami of Ohio. But then, whether it's when we're visiting in off seasons, before we had worked together, there was just a consistent core beliefs in some of the cultural things, leadership, just passion for the game, whether that's professional, whether that's collegiately, whether that's even some of the high school stuff, but just a great person. He's a great friend, great husband, great father. And so we've just, he's one of those guys that anybody that's been around him, Maria, it's hard not to love Chris Shula. He's that guy that, everybody feels like he's their best friend because he's so present when he's with you. He's so authentic. He's so refreshingly secure in who he is. And he's been prepared for this opportunity. And I'm excited because I think he's surrounded by a bunch of other good coaches. And I think he's really ready to help these players be the best that they can be. And we've got some guys that we're really excited about continuing to develop. And then there's other players that we're going to be able to onboard, whether that be via free agency or in the draft, that will continue to build on some of the things that I thought our coaches on defense and really as a whole did last year for a numerous amount of young players.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome.
Stu.
Besides Chris, you obviously also promoted Nick Caley, adding pass game coordinator duties to obviously his responsibilities as tight ends coach. What is it about him as a coach, and I guess a person too, that made you put him in that position and give him those duties?
Yeah, I think Nick is a great leader. He comes from a great pedigree. You talk about a consistent approach to the core beliefs and the things that are in alignment with winning football games. His ability to communicate, his background and knowledge that he brought from, his experiences in New England, but then also his willingness to be able to learn and have a good feel for the landscape of the league. And I think he sees the game from a big picture perspective, Stu. He coaches the tight ends, but, I have an affinity for that because that was my first position job. And I think if you do it the way that Nick does it, you can really put yourself in a position to appreciate the nuances of everything that position is asked. Terms of playing in line, playing detached from the core, being a part of the run game, being part of protections, being part of the progression in the pass game. And he's done that. And he sees the game from an all-22 lens. I think he and Mike have a really good relationship and a rapport that's really important to me. And he was somebody that we were really excited about continuing to build with here because he did have opportunities to go elsewhere. He chose to stay here, and it sure means a lot, and I'm really glad to be able to get a second year with him because you don't know how many you'll be fortunate enough to have, but we want to take advantage of those while we do. So why the hell not give him the pass game coordinator title, Stu?
And then just as a slight pivot, it was announced earlier today that you're one of the newest members of the competition committee. What does it mean to you, or what's your reaction to being involved in that now?
Yeah, here's what I would say. Maybe I won't burn my timeouts in the second half so early. I'll learn about that. Gary, you shouldn't be laughing at that. It's not funny. Anyways, here's what I will say. I'm humbled and I'm flattered that they would even consider to ask me. When you go to these league meetings over the last handful of years, I've always been interested and intrigued about, okay, how can you affect positive change? How can you have an understanding of moving the game in the right direction? And I think there's coaches and there's front office members that have done a great job of kind of setting an example. And so when Troy Vincent and Roger Goodell reached out, I was flattered, kind of wanted to understand, all right, what are some of the commitments? How can I, try to be a valuable contributor to that? And certainly looking forward to being able to learn and grow and see if we can help, do some good things. But I was certainly flattered to be a part of that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Gary.
I can't believe you laughed at that, Gary.
You teed that up for us. Come on now.
That was just an alley-oop for you, man.
Hey, I know you can't get too specific, but what do you think your biggest needs are heading into free agency and the draft? And are you excited about the prospect of being able to, or the Rams being able to spend some money in free agency and you possibly getting an opportunity to make a first-round pick?
Ooh, that's a big if. Here's what I would say is that's exactly what we're working through right now. Figuring out the best way to try to be able to use those different avenues to create as competitive of a team as we possibly can and try to improve. I think there was a lot of positive steps last year. And you do look at it from a scenario of, all right, how do we wisely do that? How do we make sure that we're identifying the types of players, whether that be via free agency? There's obviously trades as a possibility. And then Les and his group do such a great job of being ahead of the curve in regards to what the landscape of the draft looks like. We're always a little bit behind coaching wise because you get the coaching staff finalized, you get in here, you evaluate our players first and foremost, you identify those guys. And really, we just kind of are in the midst of finalizing and finishing that up. So we'll do that. Then we'll start to really move our eyes towards the draft and free agency. And so it is an exciting thing. There's a lot of things that I think will be unfolding and have fluidity to it, Gary. And so, those will be things that we'll have a better idea as we're able to kind of identify those things and then potentially be able to address some of those with just the natural, schedule and how it unfolds as it relates to free agency and then leading into the draft. And as we saw last year, sometimes with some patience, some things can work out and come to you. And so we'll see if that ends up being the case as well.
And what is, being sensitive to the situation, but what is the situation with Stetson Bennett, and how, if at all, is that going to impact you guys in terms of looking for another quarterback?
Yeah, I think the first thing is you connect with him, which we'll do that at the appropriate time, and you figure out, all right, where are you at, and is this something that we feel like is best for him and for our football team to bring him back into this ecosystem. Those will be conversations that we will have. And then I think once we have a better idea of what we'll do with that, then that'll give clarity. But you do make sure that, that right now, we got Matthew Stafford and really in our minds, we don't have a backup quarterback that's on this roster. But we'll see what that looks like, in terms of how that affects Stetson and, the draft or free agency. But was really appreciative of all the good things that Carson Wentz brought to the table, especially post-bye. I thought he did a great job against the Niners and, gave great looks to our defense week in and week out. And I know all of our coaches and his teammates love being around him.
You guys made a move yesterday, releasing Brian Allen. If you could address that we'd appreciate that. And also, Joe Noteboom has been valuable for you in kind of that reserve swing role. He does carry, I think if you look at it, a huge salary cap number. So you anticipate that he will be back with you again this season?
Yeah, the first thing is I'm glad you brought it up. Can't say enough good things about Brian Allen, the tough competitor that he was, the grit, the communication, the football IQ, just the improvement throughout, the ability to, respond from some injuries, from some setbacks, was a catalyst for our Super Bowl team. And then I think I was even more impressed with how he and Coleman Shelton had such a special rapport and the influence and the impact that he made, even if he wasn't playing as many snaps. That says to me so much about the man that he is. Really appreciative of Brian. And I think I speak for all of our coaches when we say grateful, more impressed with him, as we got to know him even better, with the way that he handled a challenging year last year. But I think, he's got such an impressive body of work as a player, but also as a person. And so really, grateful for Brian, and he's a stud. So it relates to Joe. We're working through all those things right now, Gary. I think it's so impressive what Joe did do, the toughness that he showed last year, the ability to really play all 4 spots with the exception of the center. And so we are working through that. We'll see what that looks like as it relates to his status with us moving forward. But Joe's been a big time contributor, and certainly we wouldn't have done a lot of good things without Joe and his ability to play right tackle, left tackle, right guard. And if he had to play left guard, I'm sure he could. But fortunately, we had a rookie in Steve Avila that came in and played 100% of the snaps. And so real credit to Joe for what he was able to do and the many contributions he had last year.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Adam.
Hey, Sean. What excited you about the opportunity to work with Dave Ragone again?
Where do I start? Dave is such a stud. We worked together in Washington, and we formed a really special relationship. But he's got an incredible capacity for the game, got a background as a player, but an ability to communicate. He's got this steady, even-keeled demeanor. He owns the game, like I was saying about Nick, from an all-22 perspective, but obviously his experience as a coordinator in the last few years in Atlanta, how closely he and Arthur worked, how similarly we see some of the things that we want to do offensively, his ability to be able to communicate with these quarterbacks. I mean, when you're around him and you spend time with them, the investment that he makes in these players and the relationships that he's able to develop that last long past when he's worked with you says as much as you need to know about Dave. And he's so smart. He's got such a great way about himself. And I couldn't be more excited about him choosing to come and coach our quarterbacks. He had options. And so we were fortunate that he chose to come here. And certainly it helps when you get a chance to work with Matthew Stafford. So I know that was a big part of our recruiting pitch, is getting a chance to work with him. And so a little bit of credit Matthew deserves a little bit of credit to entice Dave to come and coach for the Rams. And he's going to be a tremendous asset to us.
When you fill a position like quarterbacks coach or defensive line coach, do you go to guys like Matthew and Aaron for their input?
Yeah, I think so. I think you definitely value their input, but you also have to be able to take into account everybody. And, as it relates to Giff Smith, that was really important to get feedback from the rest of the coaching staff. Oddly enough, Giff Smith recruited me to Tulane a handful of years ago, and he's the one that recommended Eric Henderson to me from 2019. So he's been, it's crazy how things end up, just kind of how this game, you just cross paths. I know my mom and dad were fired up about it because they were big fans of Giff Smith when he was recruiting me to Tulane, and then went to Georgia Tech. And, and he was the one. I still owe him that steak dinner, but when he recommended Eric Henderson in 2019, he said, "You won't regret if you guys end up hiring him, and you'll owe me a steak dinner when it works out." And never would have thought that, as Henny ended up transitioning, then it would open up an opportunity for Giff to come here. And so it's kind of crazy how it works out. But Chris had worked with him. Chris was actually his assistant in San Diego when they were with the Chargers in San Diego. They had a good relationship. And then also being able to get Greg Williams, aka G Money, on the staff, who will be coaching our inside linebackers. Those are going to be 2 great additions to our defensive staff that we're really excited about.
And what is the vision for John Stryker's responsibility?
Not use my timeouts in the second half until I need to. No, really, here's what I would say. When I look at myself and really our team from just an after-action review, you say, all right, where's the game going? Where are things that you can do to try to separate yourself and win in those margins? And this game management or this game management coordinator, there's a select group of people that have really earned a great reputation around the league. They have calls on Wednesdays throughout the season. They're really passionate about trying to be able to give each team an edge. And you look at what this guy's reputation has been in Tennessee, working closely with Mike Vrabel. And I think from afar, I've always admired and respected the way that they handle situations. There's an innate understanding of the rules and how to be able to use those to your advantage. Clock management, some of the situational things that do end up coming up. He's done a lot of different things for Tennessee, but when they ended up having to transition, he was a guy that became available, and you wanted to be able to jump at the opportunity to get him on board, because I think he's going to be really valuable. I've really enjoyed being around him in the short amount of time and getting some exposure to just the passion he has for that specific part of the game, while also having a big picture capacity for it schematically, and then also being able to evaluate personnel. So that'll be the focus and concentration. I think it'll be evolving. You know, we were sitting down the other day and he was talking about all the different roles and responsibilities that he carried in Tennessee, and a lot of those will be carryover. But I thought it was important that we put somebody in that role to be able to be, just more consistent and help me be better for our football team. And he's somebody that I'm going to really rely upon, and I think he's going to help us out a lot.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome.
Jordan.
Hey, Sean, following up on that question, what was that like for you? Recognizing that was something, I mean, as you've sort of joked about, and even in this interview, like recognizing that was something that maybe you wanted to look into adding to your staff in this way. I know you've had people weigh in the past, but this seems like a very clearly defined asset for you and for you guys.
It does, Jordan. And we've had coaches that have kind of carried dual responsibilities. I think it was important to be able to isolate that separately because of where the landscape of the league is going. And because, if you're just being honest, I know I can improve in that area for our football team. And so you always want to take steps in the right direction. And that's not perfect by any stretch, but I do respect the track record. And he's a guy that is so well respected in that arena. And you can see the influence that he had on a lot of situations being handled the right way in Tennessee over the last handful of years, with the responsibility that he had for Vrabes. As soon as he became available, the people that carry the highest reputation in that network of coaches or people that operate in that circle immediately, you got to go get Stretch. He's the best out there. And immediately we wanted to be able to act on that. And I give a lot of credit to Brian Zanders. He's so in tune with some of that stuff. He recognized and identified that right away. Chase Blackburn was able to provide, great insight into the value that he had from when he was in Tennessee for that year. And we wanted to be intentional about intentional and proactive about trying to be able to get him on board with us, because I know he was going to have some options, and I'm glad that it worked out that he's here.
Thanks. And then a little bit of a pivot, but have you guys figured out what will happen with Coleman in his last year, whether he'll void it or not? And what are your options, whether internal and then obviously free agency and the draft coming up?
Yeah, we would really like to get him back. I think I would imagine that that's the direction that they would potentially go. We're proactively trying to be able to get that taken care of. He's a guy that we want to move forward with. I thought he did a great job with his body of work last year, the communication, the toughness, the competitiveness, all the different ways that he was productive in both run and pass. And so I would imagine, I know Tony and Matthew are doing a great job. Matthew Sharon are doing a great job of trying to be able to work with his representation to try to be able to get something done so that, he can be our center and continue to lead the way up front.
Thanks. And then you guys at this time of year usually are in meetings with draft personnel and going over film, things like that. I'm wondering if you could shed some insight on what that process is like. You catch certain things through the course of the year, but this is when you really get into a deep dive and that deep communication with the scouting department, what that process is like and what you take away from it personally.
I think the biggest thing, Jordan, right now is what's unique about some previous years is we do have an opportunity to potentially look at where are there ways that we can improve our football team through free agency. And you do want to be able to be ahead of the curve. Those meetings will start up next week. Obviously, Les and I spend a ton of time together watching film. John McKay and Matt Waugh really do a great job as it relates to just the pro scouting. And then obviously our coaches, that's all we do is we're studying NFL film, try to have a good feel for the landscape of the league. What's interesting is that a lot of these guys that are deemed free agents right now might get tagged or might re-sign with their current teams. There's some guys that might be cap casualties that we might have interest in. So our focus is on kind of both. But once you get into those draft meetings, it's really important for the collaboration of you're watching the player, you're getting all the work that's been done from the scouts, really for years in terms of how are they wired, what type of person. the continuity that we've had on that side. I think they've been able to identify a lot of the types of guys that we like and that we want to be able to bring into our building and into this culture that I think is headed in the right direction. That was, really well started in the right direction last year with all the different changes that we had to make, but there was still some of those catalysts, or what does Les say, those pillars or building blocks, still in house. So it's really watching the film, understanding the person, and then really figuring out, all right, how do they fit based on who we already have in house? And you're trying to build a team, not just collect talent. And I think over the 7 years, Jordan, the best part about where we're headed is there becomes a more clear picture of the types of guys that have worked for us. And that's not exclusive to the types of players. I'm talking about the mental makeup, the toughness, both mentally and physically. What have they been through and how do they really respond? The stuff that you can evaluate on the tape. All right, when a guy drops a ball, what's that next target look like? And how does he handle that? What are those types of responses? When things don't always go the right way, how quickly do they snap out of it? Or what are those experiences that they've maybe been through in life that can help you basically project that I'm betting on this person, that they're going to figure it out and they're not going to let some of the adverse moments that are inevitable in this league do anything but just make them stronger. And those are the kind of guys that we're looking forward to finding, that I think we've got a lot of those in-house already.
And then last for me, and weight-bearing walls, by the way, was what you were looking for.
The weight-bearing walls. Sounds negative.
I know you're one of them, so that you mentioned. So I just you process that how you will. But the
phone on him then. Go ahead.
If you could harken back to when you were a position coach and thinking about the types of details you wanted communicated in players, scouts have mentioned how detailed you can get when talking about what you expect from the players once they get, and from your coaches once they get in the building. How do you go about communicating that from yourself with the position coaches and then into those draft rooms?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think the best part is I think everybody can say when you put up the Kittles and the Kelseys from the tight end position, those are elite players. Yeah, no kidding. That's what it looks like. But how can you really paint a visual picture both through the film and then the way that you're explaining things verbally of some of the traits and characteristics that we identify as redeemable traits? And what does that look like for, those elite players, but also the starting caliber players, and then even some guys that might be situational type of players that are playing special teams, but they're coming in some of your 2 and 3 tight end sets, or they're coming in as your 6 DB. And so it's visual, and then it's making sure that, we're clear with our verbiage. We're speaking the same language. Are we really having a universal language that we all understand what that looks like? What's worked here? I think there's really good examples of guys that have contributed from different backgrounds, that are starters, that are situational players, that might be guys that are practice squad elevation or even 90-man roster guys. And so that's the most important thing. And we're always trying to figure out, okay, how can you communicate clearly? How can we identify those things where we're continuing to improve? And I do believe the more concise, the more clear, and really being as simplified as possible. I mean, one of the things that I think great coaches do is they take the complex, they make it simple. That's what great communicators do. And that's one of the things that, if you're just being honest, you're saying, all right, what are the least amount of words that you can use to provide clarity for what we're looking for so that everybody can understand it? It's something that I would try to say that I probably could work on. But we talk about that all the time, and being on the same page with the constant dialogue is the best way you do it. Spending time together, watching the film, looking at other examples, not exclusive to us, but around the league. And it's a moving target. If you look at 2017, 2018, and now 2024 season going into that, the things that I'm saying, some will be the same. And then there's also been some things that have evolved just based on the landscape of the league and maybe what fits our team and what we're identifying. And that's super important to us, especially with the amount of new coaches that we have. So it goes both ways, not exclusive to the scouts, but also us as coaches, making sure that we're on the same page with, the vision that we have for the players and then how it comes together for each of the phases.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll wrap up with Greg, then Eric, real quick.
Hey, Sean. I was over at USC last week talking to Eric Henderson, and one thing he said that was interesting while he was praising you, he was like, this is a guy who could be an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator in this league. I really believe that. I was wondering how the way you coach as a head coach has impacted defenses over the years compared to when you came in with Wade, as to now when you're going to a defensive coordinator who you're so synced up with, like Chris. How much are we going to see out there that is a reflection of you, and how much is a reflection of you working with coaches?
Well, I think it's always about working with coaches. That's a hell of a compliment from Henny. I think what we try to do is see the game through an all 22 lens. If you said, what's one thing that I would do if I could start my coaching career over, I'd coach defense. And that's the fortunate thing when you come here, just to get that perspective, to be able to say, what are they really doing? What are their rules? What are their responsibilities? And I challenge the defensive coaches to do the same thing on the offensive side. I think that's what a lot of the best coaches do. Eric Henderson, when he would get up there and go through his run game meeting, there was an understanding of blocking schemes and why certain runs were good against different front structures so that he could help our players anticipate what runs we might see based on the personnel groupings or the front mechanics that we were in that specific personnel grouping. And so we've tried to do that here, Greg, in general. It's always about the we. And that's where I think when you look at our coaching staff, it's the high character, it's the high capacity. There was a vision that really our coaches have defensively of, all right, where were we? How do we continue to evolve? And then ultimately, what are the players that we end up onboarding? We got some guys in-house that I think you can really build around, but we're also going to look very different as a team in a handful of months than what it might look like right now. And how we're able to evolve and adapt is going to be key and critical to our success. I mean, this time last year, if we were talking, we didn't even know about Kevin Dotson, Steve Avila, Puka Nacua, Kobe Turner, Byron Young, a lot of these guys. And so what we want to do a good job of is making sure that we identify the right kind of guys that fit for what we have and put that thing together. But that's a hell of a compliment to Henny, but I think all the good from Henny, but I think all the good coaches do a good job with that. And that's something that we try to do with all of our coaches here.
One place you didn't make a change was special teams coordinator. I was wondering why you decided to stick with Chase, and what needs to change on special teams if it's not the coaching.
Yeah, I believe in Chase. And what I think I saw, Greg, is that in the midst of a lot of those things, you're evaluating not just the results, but the process and what the week looks like and the way that those players continue to believe in him. And then you're saying, all right, where are some of the things that we can identify to improve? And I do think there's the solutions from Chase and from being able to play better, to be able to tackle better, to be able to consistently figure out, all right, where can we take the next steps? But, you look at some of the different things that we had to navigate with, new players at key and critical spots. And I appreciated just how steady he was in what was a challenging year. That's when you learn about people. And I learned a lot about him that made me say, you know what? I believe in this guy. I know that he's going to continue to evolve, adapt. I think we can do a better job of providing him with guys that can play more consistent, and he never said anything other than, hey, I want to do better. He took accountability and ownership, but I believe in Chase Blackburn. I'm really excited about adding Chili Davis to be able to work alongside him. We're going to miss Jeremy Springer a lot. Jeremy was an awesome coach, and I'm not at all surprised that he went to New England and won that job because of the presence he has, the knowledge, just the ability to be able to present a vision, and then you believe that vision is going to come to life. So I wish Spring nothing but the best. He'll do a great job leading the way for those guys, but it's about the person there, Greg. And I think I was able to, and we were able to separate some of the results that we know weren't good enough to be able to say, all right, when we talk about process over results, all right, are we really that way? And then watching how Chase handled that earned a tremendous amount of respect from me for him. And like I said, man, I believe in this guy, and I'm looking forward to to really taking steps in the right direction. And then I think we can be more competitive overall from top to bottom to help just be better in some of the space play that those coverage units require. And then the consistency from snap to hold the kick with the field goal operation. And then just some of the things that, in the punt unit from being able to be consistent with the location and then being consistent with our ability to be able to cast the net and be able to finish plays and flip the field. But hopefully we're not punting too much.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome.
Hey, Eric, I got to get Coach out here at 1 o'clock. Let's make it quick.
Okay, real quick, Coach. What's the benefit of the staff staying back from the combine and not going? How long have you not attended the combine, and do you miss Prime?
That's pretty good. That's why we don't go to the combine. Too much time spent at prime, not enough time spent in the film room. So here's what I would say, Eric, just based on, because we've had so much turnover, so much of this the last handful of weeks have been spent making sure that you're not rushing the process of getting the right coaches on board. And then you say, okay, part of it is location, traveling to Indy and back. We have such trust in our scouting staff with the vetting and the background they've done. There's value in it. So I don't want it to be misunderstood that there's not. But if you said we're able to stay back, stay at home, really dive into the film and the tape, which ends up being the best indicator for how we evaluate these players, we just felt like it was more efficiently utilized in terms of our time staying back. And a lot of this stuff is filmed. And so you can get that. And shoot, NFL Network does such a good job covering it. You flip it on and you feel like you might as well be on the field with some of these drills. And so, and then we'll avoid the hangover that Prime usually gave me.